Hello, 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 Facebook viewers. Here's another Thursday Night Live with Black Coffee, No Sugar, No Cream. And my producer is here with me, Trisha Duckworth. Say what's up to everybody.
Hello, everyone. We are happy to be here with you. Not happy about what we're getting ready to talk about, but we're definitely privileged and honored to be here with you all.
Yeah, so we want to welcome Alexis Moore. Alexis Moore is the niece of Roberta Asplund, who is her aunt. She's an elderly woman who has basically been taken away from her family, victimized by elder abuse, and basically bankrupt by probate court. So that's why we're not happy to talk to you about this tonight. No one wants to see their loved one go through these type of things and all of the idiosyncrasies with every single layer of authority that she's been through. So we're going to go through this journey with her. It's a very emotional journey. So thank you, Alexis, for being willing to share this story on this evening. I know that it's not easy for you to talk about this, but it's necessary because we want to see your aunt get the justice and her freedom. And we want other people to be aware of the corruption in this system because we talk about corruption and everyone knows that Survivor Speaks is about sounding alarm against corruption. And we just feel like your story should be heard. So we welcome you and thank you.
Well, thank you both for having me tonight. This is a very, very difficult topic, but I think it's important that we get the information out and how to avoid this, how to deal with it, and what your options are, and how difficult a fight it is that once a loved one is in probate, it's very difficult to get them back out. My aunt was ill, and in 2017 she had an aneurysm, and the hospital encouraged the three adult children to put her into guardianship because they couldn't decide on what the best course of treatment for her. The two younger children wanted to leave her in a facility, saying she would just end up there anyway. And her oldest son, whom she was closest to, wanted to bring his mother back home to live.
Mhm.
She eventually was able to return home, but there was the placement of a guardian. And once they place a guardian, no matter what the circumstances are, it's almost impossible to get them out. Even though they're only supposed to be appointed, as a temporary or part-time thing in most cases, they make permanent guardianship. They usually bring in a conservator, especially if there's conflict and if there are assets that they can poach. And that kind of starts the whole downward spiral.
That is so unfortunate. Tell us about your aunt and her legacy of work before we got to this point.
Sure. My aunt spent her entire life in public service. She was a public health nurse. She started a lot of programs for young children and programs for disadvantaged people. And she spent her whole life working for the good of other people. And so it's kind of ironic that she should end up in this place. One of the things she was very vocal about locally was elder abuse. And here she finds herself, in that situation, which is just unbelievable.
Wow. I am grateful for her service and all of the work. And it's sad that we fail our seniors, once they've worked so hard and put in
Mhm.
so much work, especially in the community and fighting for justice, for healthcare. So now we understand that now she does have a guardian. How did she become to have or even need a guardian?
Well, when she had the aneurysm, she wasn't incapacitated for a period of time, but she then recovered. So at that point, you're supposed to be released from guardianship. I have letters from Dr. Amy Miller from the University of Michigan, who treated my aunt for probably 10 years or more. And she writes that the summation of the cognitive disorders clinic was that the removal of the guardian was in order. Now, when these were presented to the court, that alone should have been enough to get her released from guardianship. They refused to release her. And one of the first steps they did was to try to sell her property, her 2 homes. She had a rental home that her son lived in. They sold that immediately. The proceeds went to the first conservator. So for 4 months worth of work, she took the remaining $20,000 that was left over for 4 months worth of work. Then they appointed another conservator who came in and immediately tried to target my aunt's home. They would actually, the guardian would put her in the car, or her son would say, oh, let's go for a ride, Mom. They would drive to a nursing home and try to make her get out in the nursing home. Now in Michigan, you can't touch another human being because that would be assault. So if she walked in on her own, the guardian could demand that she stayed there. But because she refused to go in, she knew what was going on. They just kept saying, oh, let's just go check out this nursing home. You might like it here. Well, she told me that she opened the window and started screaming out the window she was being kidnapped so that they would leave her alone. I mean, it's horrible. So when they wouldn't get her to go voluntarily into a nursing home, the guardian went to the judge in an emergency ex parte petition, mental health petition, to have her forcibly removed from her home and taken to the University of Michigan Hospital for a psych evaluation with 2 different doctors. Well, she passed with both doctors. They said there's no need for treatment and there's no need for medication, no need for hospitalization. She needs to go home. State law mandates that you return the person to the home within 24 hours. So the hospital tried to discharge her. The guardian refused discharge. The hospital was so concerned about this that they called APS, Adult Protective Services, and said there's something not right here. APS came, I talked to them afterwards, and she said, although I can't speak to exactly what your aunt told me, I can tell you that she told me some very disturbing things. Well, they didn't discharge her home. The guardian had her moved to the overflow hospital, St. Joe's, because all the beds were full at Michigan. Now, there's nothing wrong with her, either psychologically or physically. Held her in the hospital for 12 days, which would run probably about $200,000, okay, to babysit her for those 12 days. And then moved her into a lockdown facility for mentally ill people with Alzheimer's and dementia. She's never been diagnosed with either, at least up until that point. They kept her there in lockdown, isolated from her friends and family, except for the 2 younger children who wanted her gone, and just completely isolated her for the entire time the trial was going on to remove the guardian and conservator, because she had asked me if I would apply for it. So I said I would. So all the while this is going through the courts, she's kept in this lockdown facility. The judge came out with a final order on October 1st of 2019, and within 2 weeks they moved her to another facility that was much cheaper. So you couldn't get in. She was not allowed a phone or phone calls, no stamps. I mean, she's so smart that she actually befriended another person there and got them to sneak a letter out to her son for his birthday one year.
And how old is she now?
She's now 94.
Okay.
And when they were moving her from one facility to another, because they were trying to hide her essentially from us, the people that were trying to help her, they tied her to a stretcher, injected her, and moved her in the middle of the night, reportedly in the middle of the night, so that we wouldn't be able to find her. We called all over for weeks. We didn't know where she was. Then when we found out where she was, they wouldn't even let the APS person in. The APS person went to investigate because she'd seen her from the hospital, wondering what's going on now. We called them. and they refused to let her in. And she finally had to call her boss and go through all of this just to get in to interview her.
Wow.
What has this experience been like for you and your family? I imagine it's just excruciating and emotionally draining. What has this experience been like for you and your family?
It's devastating because we've tried so many different avenues. I've called over 24 elder abuse type things, like even the Michigan Elder Justice Initiative. We try to get help from them, legal aid, you name it. We went everywhere. And basically, these are just places are just clearing houses. Oh, check with them, but nobody does anything. And one of the reasons why they couldn't do anything is because unless they can speak to her directly and she asks them for help, then they can't help. They can't intercede when she already has an attorney. Well, the judge and the guardian refused to let anyone see her so that she could get legal help. She actually wrote a letter, hand wrote a letter to the judge and to the court-appointed attorney and fired him, essentially firing him. And the court refused it. Now, interestingly, this court-appointed attorney has been appointed to almost 400 cases in the last 3 years alone, and nearly 300 of them were mental illness and developmental disability. So, they take the most vulnerable people in society and they sick these bloodsuckers on them. So this guy has probably taken hundreds of thousands of dollars in pay from Washtenaw County to represent my aunt, for one. Did he ever file a single petition to help her? No. When she was taken on the mental health petition, by law, you have 14 days to have a hearing. It's court mandated, state mandated. They never had a hearing for my aunt. They just took her and kept her. He never filed anything for her rights, never once in all that time. It's a racket. It's a very well-oiled machine that they have.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure she's devastated, because I think about, when my grandmother was still alive, and the fragility of her emotions and everything else, just from the aging process and the amount of stress that she can endure under those circumstances. That in and of itself is really, really, really emotionally draining, especially for a 93-year-old. But I give her a fist up, like, for being as strong as she is, and she's thinking, on how to beat the system and how to get herself out of the situation. So I think that that's really cool.
She's very sly, because when the guardian is around, like once in a while you can get a call in maybe, or if the guardian's right there, because they always eavesdrop on everything, she'll wait till the guardian leaves the room, and then she'll start whispering to you what's going on. When the guardian's there, she pretends the guardian's her best friend. Oh, we get along great. We have so much fun. The minute she leaves the room, she starts, because that's how she survives. This is her only contact.
Yeah, and you wouldn't want them to be beating her or mistreating her any more than they already have under those circumstances. So I'm glad she's savvy enough to be able to think like that, for her own protection.
Well, interestingly, when she was in the mental health facility, she was being assaulted on a regular basis. We called the police, we called APS. Now she has a shunt in her brain to drain fluid off of it. And there was a woman that would come up with a closed fist and pound her on that area. There was another woman that would take her cane and hit her in the back of the legs, trying to make her drop and fall. I reported it numerous times to the police, Adult Protective Services. The first time that we reported it to, I believe it was Lara this time, Lara never even went to the facility, never even looked at her to see if she was okay, but called on the phone and talked to the facility, talked to my aunt and said, oh, no, nothing happened here. Now, my aunt testified in court in front of the guardian, the conservator, her court-appointed attorney, the judge and everyone else that she was being assaulted. Do you know what they did? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. They
Yeah,
left
they're
her
going to paint
there.
her as demented and, you know, senile and everything else because of her age. And she's very sharp. She knows what's going on.
Yep, yep. And yet they wouldn't believe her. I mean, you know, she testified in front of the judge that she was drugged, that she was tied down and moved in the middle of the night. That and the fact that they secreted her after they took her is unlawful imprisonment,
Yeah.
and they've done nothing about it.
This sounds like a Lifetime movie or
It
something that
does.
you would see on Netflix or something. I mean,
Everybody
it's
says
just,
it's like Dateline episode.
yeah, ridiculous that this is not fiction. It's fact.
No,
With
Right.
your aunt,
Right.
Miss Roberta Asplund.
I
A picture of her too, because we want everyone to see, you know, exactly what has been done to her. And it's so ironic you have answered a lot of our questions that we have had, that we have up. So I want to just take a moment here to just show Miss Asplund's picture. And I want to ask you, because you said you reached out to individuals, and you can kind of talk a little bit more about that, about who you reached out to. But I want to know, why do you think no one has stepped in to help?
I believe that the corruption is that deep. And from everything that I've investigated, you know, over the last 2 years, it all comes back. Like I said, it's a very well-oiled machine. The judge, um, I believe, is a part of this whole system because at one point I saw another case before us, and the gentleman was basically arguing for his life. He didn't want guardianship, he didn't want conservatorship, but the family was after the money. He had someone that was helping him, and the judge said, oh, well, we'll just assign a conservator for just a couple weeks. Well, you're going to assign a conservator just for a couple weeks to see if it's worth picking his pockets. So there just happened to be an attorney who works as a conservator sitting in the courtroom. She had no business being there, and the judge appointed this woman. Now I know, because we looked into this woman, it was my aunt's first conservator. She'd filed bankruptcy. How are you having someone that's filed bankruptcy overseeing someone else's money? And the pictures that you're looking at are, the first one where she looks well is when she's in the mental facility, the mental illness facility. And, you know, it's a pretty large place. She was locked down. This is where they denied her all her rights. They turned her pastor away at the door, wouldn't let the pastor see him. And then shortly after the first picture in blue, she was moved to this next facility. And that's where you see how horrible she looks. They started water restricting her like a lab animal because she's so old, she couldn't always get to the bathroom in time. So she told me they restricted her water to 3/4 of a cup a day. Then shortly after that, we find out that she started having strokes. Well, dehydration can be a cause of stroke because it thickens the blood, and then you start having clots. She also has a clot in her heart. She has multiple times asked for medical attention that they've refused. In fact, 2 days before the first reported stroke, they found her in an altered state of mind in bed on a Tuesday morning, and she'd been telling people since Sunday that she didn't feel well. Another time she ended up in the hospital. She told them for days, I need medical attention. And she told a family member, she said, I told them I was going to call an ambulance myself because they wouldn't. So she's been physically abused, emotionally, mentally, financially. It's just inconceivable.
Sickening is what it is. I got a couple questions here offline. And they're asking which judge
Oh, this is Judge Julia Outside. She's in the Washtenaw County Probate Court.
Okay.
And my cousin, which is Roberta's son, actually filed a 160-page grievance against her to the Judicial Tenure Committee. They never even looked at it, just out and out dismissed it. Didn't ask her to answer to any of it. She's come out with illegal rulings, unlawful rulings as orders. And nobody seems to be able to do anything. And then the conservator that she has working for her apparently is well known in that court. And she's been called a monster by more than just us. So this is another example where I think what's happening is I think the court, when they have people coming in, they call certain attorneys to be in the court when they're reviewing these cases, because another case that we just found out about in Judge Outside's court, she said, oh, well, I'm going to appoint a conservator. They didn't want a conservator. And she said, let me just walk out in the hallway and see if there's a conservator there. And lo and behold, there just happened to be a conservator standing there that she then called into the court and took them for a sleigh ride as well.
Oh,
And your
my.
aunt had more than $1 million, $1 million plus dollars worth of cash and assets and everything. And now she's thousands of dollars in debt because of this process.
Correct. There's a $53,000 outstanding bill from a long-term care facility where she went through rehabilitation after the aneurysm. No one ordered her to go into this facility. No doctor said she had to. The guardian took her and put her in this facility as a means to spend down, it seems, to spend down her assets. And then once they spend down all the assets, then they say, we have to sell your property in order to maintain you. I went and I found out that she could get a reverse mortgage on her home to stay there. She could have gotten, I think it was up to 80% of the worth of the house, which would have maintained her, paid all her bills, and maintained her for the rest of her life. The judge actually ordered the conservator at one point to do this. The conservator refused to do it, said it cost too much. It would have been $300 out of pocket. So instead, the conservator tried to sell it to Millman, who flips houses in the area. They applied for building permits on my aunt's home before the judge, a month before the judge ordered the sale of the house. He paid for and got these building permits okayed. That's illegal. He signed an affidavit saying that he was the new owner. The conservator filed paperwork in this saying that she was my aunt's personal representative. A personal representative is only after you die. So in order to kind of rush this through the building permit process, they pretended that my aunt was dead and that, you know, he already had the sale of the house. The judge hadn't even ordered it yet. Also,
and 8% of the value of her home would be what, about $400,000?
Yep. We could have paid all her bills, kept her comfortable in her own home. She built this home, lived there for over 50 years, and she wanted to die there. Now all she talks about is going back to New York, where she was born, to see my dad's grave, her brother's grave, her other brother's grave, and her parents, and she wants to die there. They won't even let her out to go die where she wants to die. Yeah.
I'm just speechless, and I see a lot of our viewers just putting up sad faces and everything. It's just ridiculous. And your aunt is not the only one. So thank you for coming out on this live to tell her story, because this happens to a lot of people, more than we would even want to know. It's a reprehensible act. It is unlawful. It is abusive, and it needs to stop. But this is another instance of the police policing the police, everyone working within the same organization. So they don't want to stand for what's right and stand up against one another, which takes us to our next question. Because you've reached out to many people for help. Have any of them been helpful? And if so, how?
Well, I reached out to Governor Whitmer. I sent her a letter going through the details of the illegal activity, everything that had happened to my aunt. She sent me back a letter and I reached out to her as the, highest law enforcing person in the state. And she sent me a letter back and said that I should contact the bar if I felt that there was a problem. So that didn't go anywhere. I actually spoke to Dana Nessel on the phone after filing multiple complaints to the AG's office. And she told me that she was going to have someone from the Michigan Elder Justice Initiative call me, which was Allison Herschel. Allison Herschel called me and said, nope, sorry, there's nothing we can do. We contacted multiple divisions of the AG's office, including healthcare fraud, because they kept her hospitalized for 12 days, at a cost of probably $200,000. And they said, no problem there. We have probably a half a dozen letters from the Attorney General's office saying, no, nothing happened here. In fact, just today, we received notice from Jason Evans. He's an assistant AG there. And healthcare fraud, again, had supposedly investigated this, said there was no wrongdoing. So we appealed to him as the head of healthcare fraud. And he said he would send it to a different department to see if there was any reason that they could intervene. So they sent it to an assistant AG, and she's the public administrator. Her name is Catherine Barron. She just happened to work with the judge at the AG's office because the judge is a former assistant attorney general. So we just got notice today that, nope, sorry, there's nothing wrong here. Nothing happened. And that was kind of our last hope, really. We went to the FBI in Ann Arbor and in Detroit. They said, no, there's nothing wrong here. But interestingly, in the Detroit office, one of the FBI agents' wife is a probate judge. So I guess you could see why they probably wouldn't want to get involved in that, because she's one of the worst offenders, from what I understand.
You know what?
Lawrence Kestenbaum, and I'm sorry if I'm not saying that correctly.
Congratulations to your win yesterday, Lawrence. He won a race yesterday.
Oh, okay. That's really cool. He says, I am frankly surprised that the Judicial Tenure Commission ignored all of this.
I'm not
either. I mean, I can see it from his vantage point, but they scratch each other's back and do all kinds of.
They're just other lawyers. So of course they're not going to find fault with a judge. It's having the foxes watch over the hen house, really.
Well, that's the thing, is that, these things have happened. They've been happening, right? It just didn't start to happen. These things have been happening, but I believe that people's voices have been silenced. And if there's no coverage, if nobody knows what's going on, then people get to sweep stuff under the rug, because in my mind, everybody that went to school with this judge, worked with this judge, they should have recused themselves. They shouldn't even have been making any decisions at all about this case. So because that's your friend, because you went to the same school as her, your loyalty is to her and not to the people. And see, this is the thing that we've been working to change the narrative, right? Like, the people are the real power. What happens is we've been rocked to sleep. Individuals have been made to believe that because they are in office, that they have the real power. Well, yeah, I get why they would think that, because sometimes we sit powerless on the sidelines and we don't fight back. But what it's going to take is for us to, really, really start to sound the alarm, stand together, and really challenge these individuals. I can only imagine how you all have felt so alone, you know what I mean, in this process. And so, I want to say thank you for being the warrior that you are,
Oh,
and
yeah.
for your fight, because this is not your mom, this is your aunt. You could have easily walked away. So let me ask you that. What keeps you fighting?
Um, I am just kind of a stickler for people's civil rights. I've always been. This isn't the first case. I helped my sister through hers. I've helped people with age discrimination situations that they've worked in. So this is just kind of what I do. And of course, this is so much more close to home because it is my aunt, because she is vulnerable, because I can't stand people taking advantage of vulnerable people. I mean, there's just no excuse. These people, both the conservator and the guardian's husbands, are doctors at the University of Michigan. I don't really think they need the money, but yet here they are, breaking rules and taking from people that have worked hard their whole life and have given so much to their community. I mean, it's just incredible. And I'm one of those people that if you push my back up against the wall, I'm going to come out swinging and I'm not going to stop.
Yeah.
They have tried to stop us in so many ways. They filed a grievance against our attorney. They're now suing our attorney and Roberta's son for $25,000. It's just unbelievable. We know a freelance reporter who was reporting all this. She put like 2 years worth of work into a story. The attorney general the next day announced their big listening tour. They tried to steal the thunder and say, oh, look what we're doing. They haven't done a single thing.
That's right.
In fact, one of the assistant AGs that they got the most complaints on was a guy by the name of Michael Moody. So he was removed from his position. And guess what? He's back working there now. Yeah.
That's what's sad to me is that we had a very corrupt, very corrupt governor, right? Killing the people in Flint with the water. You have all of these people that get voted out. You vote new people in, right? And you think that when you vote somebody else in, they're going to do the right thing. And for me, I seen the big to do about, the elder abuse task force, and, it was just this big thing, all these listening parties. And why would you have a listening tour when you're not listening? Generally, if you have a listening tour, it's so that you can listen to what's going on and proactively put measures in place that would ensure that this is not going to happen again. So you created a powerless task force?
They're media whores. That's
Yep.
what that is.
What'd you say, Valerie? I didn't hear you.
Media whores.
I agree. I mean, this was just a stunt to divert attention away from what was really happening. She had this listening tour. They got thousands and thousands of complaints, and I think they acted in 2 cases. That was it. And we've never heard anything else about it again. Now, I talked to her in person. I told her. She's refused to do anything. We went to financial crimes, Scott Teeter. Scott Teeter sent us a letter. I told you I wasn't going to help you with this, and I'm not going to.
All that really needed to happen, so they drained her of $1 million plus more dollars, all of her assets, her home. Now she's thousands of dollars in debt, saying that she's incompetent when her doctor said that she was competent. So if they would have just let her out of the hospital initially when her competency was declared, we really wouldn't even be talking about this, right?
That's correct. And that's what the law states should have happened. However, these judges are given complete immunity from any wrongdoing that they're doing. So there's no accountability, Valerie. I think that's one of the big problems. When you see this happen time and time again in court after court after court, and you do nothing, you are just allowing this corruption to flourish. And that's essentially what's happened here. There's no responsibility and no accountability.
So sad. We have State Rep Jewel Jones with us. He said, hello, family, Tricia.
Hey there.
Holla.
Hello.
So, he's a state rep, and I'm glad that he tuned in because, we need legislators, we need the attention of everyone when it comes to this probate, corruption, and elder abuse. And I just don't feel that it gets the attention that it deserves. And like you said, it's been put in front of people who are friends outside of the job or afraid to stand up. And that's the problem. I think a lot of people forget when we elect someone in office, they work for us.
Correct.
They work for us. And at the point they're not working for us, it's time to do something different. Your aunt lived on this earth 93 years, worked her entire life. And now her entire, not just her life savings is gone, basically her mentality,
her freedom,
but they've stressed her out.
Yeah.
She probably was nowhere near, I won't say probably, she wasn't mentally ill when they first took her in, but I bet you she's teetering on that now. Who wants to endure a 3/4 of a cup drink of water per day? You can't talk to your kids. You can't talk to your family. You can't see anyone. You have a $500,000 house, but you're put in isolation in some mental asylum. And who knows what else is going on. So she probably is showing some signs of mental illness and post-traumatic stress disorder and all of that now.
Yeah.
Yes, she is.
Yeah.
My cousin, who they do allow talk to her once in a while, last time she called, my poor aunt kind of really was out of it, and I think that as she continues to have these strokes, she's just going to get worse and worse. And this is what they're waiting for. What happens is they hold these people in captivity until they die. We have, I think, 10 cases in the Court of Appeals. So then when you get to the Court of Appeals and the person's dead, they say, oh, well, the point's moot. We just don't need to follow this anymore. I mean, that's how ridiculous. So then it just reinforces their behavior that if we just hold these people until they die, we don't have any liability then. And yet we have all the money, we have everything that we wanted, and they just walk away free.
Mr. Kirsten Baum said, what happened with the freelance reporter? But before you answer that, I do want to throw out here for all of our viewers that they're probably going to take this video down or ban us for breaking some community rule or whatever, because the family was also told that they couldn't get on social media or do any of these things, which is ridiculous. If you want to tell your story, that's freedom of speech. You can say what you want to say, but he wants to know what happened with the freelance reporter.
The freelance reporter was actually getting death threats, and she went to the AG with all the information, and she could tell that they weren't going to do anything with it. So she held on to it. And if I understand the story correctly, she left town because of the death threats. She sublet her apartment to a student, and I think within 2 weeks that student ended up murdered in her apartment.
Wow.
Yeah.
The thing is with this, and I mean, this is really like scary, right? And I'm letting all the viewers know that if something happens to Valerie Kelly Bonner or myself, you need to go talk to Judge and Alexis. Like, don't leave me out.
Don't forget me, girls. I'm with you.
If anything happens to us, go see Judge, what's her name?
Julia Outside.
Go see Julia outside and throw her outside of the courtroom because she does not.
I tell you what, if somebody come in to the emergency room with about 380 bullets in their ass, they can investigate. Because I probably shot them if they was trying to kill me.
This intrigued me because the thing is that you get the death threats because the powers that be do not want the covers being snatched off of this. They don't want it to be exposed. And why? Because it goes so far up. So many palms have been greased with this money. So many people involved. And you said something earlier I think it was Mr. Kestenbaum that said, about legislature, because there's nothing that you can really do to recall a judge, right? It would have to be going through the Judicial Tenure Committee. Well, they're not doing anything, right? So what's your recourse then? And so it's like you're rendered powerless unless you use your voice. And then when you use your voice, they try to silence you. Look what happened to Jody White.
Yep.
Jody White was putting stuff out, putting stuff all over the internet, exposing what was going on down there in Oakland County. And they
silenced her.
And they silenced her, drummed up some charges, against her, put her in jail for 33 days, told her she couldn't put anything out on Facebook. Like, they really, really tried to silence the voice of the people. And we're just saying that that's not appropriate. And at the end of the day, we have to sound the alarm, because while I hate to say this, but if Miss Asplund does not make it out of this situation, God forbid, I hope that she does, we want to ensure that this doesn't happen to somebody else. But what I want to say is this, and I got to get on my soapbox for a minute. We need families to stop fighting. We need families to stop fighting over something that's not yours. And stop fighting and wanting to put your loved ones away. And that's not appropriate, because the only way that they can get this leg in is if there's some rift going on. You see what they said to you? Oh, hold on, let me go outside. I think there's a conservator out there. You think they just by chance had a conservator out there? No, they knew what they were going to do. Everything was strategically planned. And when the family gets in these fights, it plays right into it. So if we would stop fighting as family members, maybe we could curb some of this stuff. But we got to learn how to get along and love each other and do what's best for our seniors.
Yeah, because this is like, there's both extremes. You have families that's broke, so it ain't nothing to fight over and don't give a damn. Then you have families that's rich that fight over everything and end up not giving a damn.
Yeah.
It's never, ever, ever about the individual and about the person. I have horror stories about being a matriarch in my family and being in charge of assets and being in charge of final wishes and stuff like that. And it is hell to pay, but I'm built for it. But it is hell to pay. People are very selfish. They're very greedy. They're evil, they're bitter, and they want something for nothing that they didn't even work for.
Exactly.
And it's not always, necessarily just people that have money, because what has happened in some cases that some of these judges have interests in like home health care businesses and things like that. So what they do is you might have someone come in that's on SSI or Social Security or whatever, and then they're funneled into these care programs that the judge owns part of, or whatever the situation may be. So really, there isn't anybody, that's safe from this.
And systematically, the way things work, I remember when my husband was dying and transitioning, and he spent so many days like in a rehab, and I wanted to bring him home, and they were challenging me like, well, no, he can stay here. Well, wait a minute, the insurance has ran out. You tell me that I can't take him home, but if he stays here, you're going to take all of his income because the insurance is no longer valid. So now it takes all of his income and extra to keep him here when I'm very well capable of taking care of him. So I know what you're talking about. I know exactly what you're talking about. They play a whole lot of games. And the reason why they want to keep you away is because you're too smart.
Yep.
Anybody that can navigate this system and knows this system or whatever, they try to shut them down.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in the case with Jody, when it went to court, there's cameras all over the courthouse, and it just so happens where they've accused her of the crime, there was something wrong with the camera that day.
That's the thing right there. These things are not cool. It reminds me of what happened to Mr. Anderson. Mr. Anderson down here in Washtenaw County, elderly man, was pulled over to the side of the road by some cops. They stripped him down butt naked, handcuffed him, and made him lay in the ditch. and all of a sudden there's no tape. You know, it's like, come on now. Like, so this corruption just goes so deep. It goes into our police departments, it goes into the judicial system. There's prosecutorial misconduct. There's so much that goes on that we all feel powerless about. And even in Senate, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, I know for a fact, Jody Wyatt and a team of people, they were at the Senate Judiciary Committee meetings, you know, trying to get some legislation passed and put in place that would stop this foolishness. So my thing is this, and this is where we, the people, come and play at. We got to get people out of office that don't do what we say. The real power lies with the people, but we keep putting people back in office that think they're in control, that run their agenda, and they don't run the agenda of the people. So, I mean, if we put people in office that will follow, that will carry the heart of the people and do what's right for the people, then we'll see some results.
You know, what's happened is very conveniently, any laws that are passed always seem to have some sort of loophole that they can get around. There's a gentleman out in, I'm not from Michigan, Lucido. Is he a representative?
Yeah, Pete Lucido. I believe he's the leader of the chair of the Judiciary Committee.
Okay, well, he recently, I think, helped develop a bill, signed a bill in, and I think it just came in maybe March of this year. And the bill said that if someone's being isolated from their family, you can petition to appoint a visitation guardian. So Roberta's ex-daughter-in-law petitioned to have the pastor be the visitation guardian. And then it would be up to the pastor to decide and make sure that everything ran smoothly with visitation. And then the son that hasn't been able to visit with her in almost 2 years would then, have visitation. The judge denied it.
Judge outside?
Yeah, just denied it. Said, no, it wasn't you that got denied visitation, pretending like she didn't know how the law worked.
We got to get outside that courtroom, because obviously she's abusing her power. And I'm not going to say, because people say, oh, well, maybe she doesn't know. She knows. She knows exactly what's going on. And she is choosing to operate in misconduct. And that is just totally unacceptable. Something needs to be done about that.
Yep. And when I was questioning the guardian under oath, asking her about the fraudulent mental health petition, bringing up all the flaws in this petition, the judge ordered me to stop questioning the guardian. And she said, I signed that petition. Well, you signed a fraudulent petition and you just announced that to the world. But what gets done about that? Nothing. Nothing. There wasn't actually, the guardian did manage to get all the names spelled right in the mental health petition. And she did check the box that my aunt wasn't a veteran. So she got 2 things right on this whole, thing. Lied in an affidavit, in a sworn affidavit, and then admitted it under oath when being questioned, and nothing's happened to her. She didn't do anything wrong.
So, and that was given to the commission?
Everything. I mean, this has gone out to everybody. Now, the Washtenaw County Prosecutor's Office, one of the things that they oversee are mental health commitments. I've reached out to Brian Mackey and Conrad Siller, the first assistant, multiple emails over months and months, and they flat out refuse to do anything.
Well, I could step out on the line and say for certain, Brian Mackey is one of the most corrupt prosecutors I know. So
I would have to guess that.
At the end of the day, I can understand why you got nowhere with his office, but hopefully in January, we have restored integrity back into that office. And so, it sounds like we need a protest. We need something to let the Judicial Tenure Commission know that they need to do something about this. And honestly, I just don't know, because I know Jody and them have done all of this. They've been to the commission. They've been to the AG. Nobody wants to do what's right. So what do we do?
Well, that's one of the reasons why I included on my aunt's picture a phone number and an email for people to reach out. Because one of the things that we're trying to do is we're trying to get information from other people. So no, it's not just an isolated case. This is what's happening all the time. And if you contact Randy, that's Roberta's son, and we are gathering as much information as possible to share with the federal government, because we've tried every avenue in the state humanly possible, and up and including the President of the United States. I wrote to him and asked for him to intervene. So we've done everything we possibly can. The Michigan Department of Civil Rights, Ann Arbor and Detroit FBI. I mean, we've tried everything. Ann Arbor, the Sheriff's Department. When I called the state police, the next day after the guy talked to the opposing side, came back and said, I can't talk about this. They're not doing anything wrong. Everything's fine. I said, well, did they give you any proof or documentation of the allegations they're making of us? Because I can provide all the documentation you need to make a case against him. He said, I can't talk about this anymore. And if you have any other questions, you need to call my supervisor.
See, that's just like Dateline. Like I said before, this seems like a Lifetime movie or Dateline or something you would see on Netflix. I think I know the answer to this, but what would justice look like for you? What would it look like?
You know, in a sense, this for me has gone way beyond just my aunt, because the more you learn, the more you know, the further the corruption has seeped into this entire system. You don't want to, I want to see justice for my aunt. I want her let out before she dies. Honestly, I would like to see these people in prison, because that's where they belong. And that's, you know, would be in the perfect thing, to hold people accountable. Because if you started holding accountable these judges, conservators, guardians, these attorneys, then you wouldn't see this happen. But as long as they can skate and not get caught, not be held responsible or accountable for anything that they've done, why would they stop?
Well, you know, you've shined a light on me, because I know I'm working with Survivor Speaks and Trichet. A lot of focus has been on prosecutorial misconduct, but now we add to that list conservator misconduct, guardianship misconduct, any form of misconduct that resides within that judicial branch of government.
Yep.
They don't need to be indemnified. Like, they should be able to be prosecuted just like any other criminal.
Right. That's what they are. And that's what they should be treated as, instead of, I mean, the judge in her final closing, in my closing argument, I pointed out the whole conspiracy part of it, how none of this could have occurred without the others helping or not doing. So everybody had to do their own part in order for them to strip Roberta's estate and keep her isolated. And in the closing argument, or in the judge's final order, she said that the guardian was just doing a great job. So I couldn't be the guardian or conservator, because they were just doing wonderful jobs. Well, my aunt started out with an estate worth almost $1 million. She's now tens of thousands of dollars in debt. Could I possibly done any worse? I don't think so.
Wow.
You know, she's now in failing health, penniless. They literally don't give her $5 a week for anything, nothing. They took and destroyed all the stuff, all her possessions in her house. Her whole life's worth of possessions were given away, destroyed, what they couldn't sell. No accounting for any of this. In fact, multiple times we asked for an accounting, which a conservator is supposed to supply. And at one of the hearings, the conservator had a box of paper just dumped into this box. And she said to the lawyer that's working for Roberta's son, well, here's some documents. You can look at it if you want. That's not how you present documents to the court or another attorney. So she's failed to account really for anything.
Well, you know, the scales of justice are so imbalanced. I was sitting here and my mind drifted away to young kids So when CPS gets involved, it's like pulling teeth to try to get some of these kids away from their families, even when they are being abused and you know it and you can prove it or whatever, but they let them stay in that situation. Although there are some outlying cases where that's not the case, but I've seen a lot of cases where it was like, we want to do everything within our power to keep the children in the home with their family.
Right.
So how did that reverse now on this end? You know, they should be doing everything in their power to make sure that she is with her family instead of in
Especially
the
if
system,
that's
especially at her age and
right.
everything.
And if that's what she wants, and the law says she's supposed to be consulted about where she lives, where she's placed, and what she does. And how about her doctor sent like 2 or 3 letters we have from her doctor saying she doesn't need guardianship. A single letter from your physician should be enough to get you released from guardianship. And guess what? Judge outside didn't release her.
It sickens me what this judge has done. And man, it seems like it's a battle that can't be won. But what we always say is our motto is that, hey, all giants can fall. All giants can fall, and we just have to keep sharing. We just have to keep this story going. You know, so we're going to be pushing this across social media outlets until they try to make us take it down. And Judge Outside, I will say to you, because I know that someone probably is going to give this to you, you need to do what's right. I don't see how you sleep at night. I don't see how you could take individuals from their loved ones. Let me put my social work hat on. When you take people from their loved ones, you take their will to live away, because how they thrive is based on their well-being, eating good, having the love and the support of their family members and their friends. You took that from this woman. You took that from Miss Asplund. And in an effort to do what? Because you know that if you continue with these practices, that she will eventually die. So then how many more people have you murdered or attempted to murder? Because that's what this looks like for us. So Judge Outside, if you are watching this, we're going to ask that you start to do the right thing. You were not put in that seat so that you could play God over people's lives. And we're serving you notice right now. Survivor Speak, we will campaign against your next election. We will ensure that you have a hard time getting in that seat if you even get in it at all, because this is ridiculous.
The saddest thing is she is running unopposed. So the only way to get her out would be to impeach her. Yep.
Wow. The saddest thing outside of the whole thing is just reprehensible. But in addition to that, lost time can never be found. Like you can get more material possessions, but the time that she could be spending with her family, her children, with you, just her freedom, lost time can never be found. You cannot manufacture more time.
I basically sent a letter to the guardians that, can we buy her back? You know, they've had instances where people have had to pay for certain owed, things. So I said, how much is it going to cost? We just wanted her back before she dies. The stuff is gone. You can't get it back. We want her. I mean, when you're 94 years old, she's now 94, how much more time do you have? And now we know that she's given up. When she says she wants to go home to New York to die, you've broken her will. You've hurt her physically, mentally, emotionally, in every way humanly possible. You've destroyed this life, and all of us who have been working day and night to get her out.
Stephanie Rochelle say they crooked, and she said something else after that. You can go back and read it. And she said they go on to hell. This is just
I hope they go to jail before they go to hell. That's my wish.
Yeah. Well, those are all the questions that we had. Is there anything else you would like to say?
I think that Trisha had a very good point about, regardless of how families come together, that if you care at all about that individual, you will put aside any disagreements or whatever and look out for the best interest of that person. Because once they are in probate, you will never ever get them back. The system is so corrupt. I mean, when you have doctors saying that there's nothing wrong with this person, the mental health petition, two doctors evaluated her that day and said there's nothing wrong with her. She needs to go home, and she's never set foot in her home again. And all because they wanted her home to sell it and make money for themselves.
Wow. Well, thank you. I would love to stay abreast of the story, and we can come live again with updates and help you publicize this and put the information out. I believe that's your cousin Randy, her son.
Yep.
And if anybody's out there and you know of any cases of probate corruption or elder abuse or anything like that, please get in touch and share your story with Randy Asplund, because Roberta Asplund is his mother. So again, you can share your story of probate corruption to him. His email address, randy@randyasplund.com. Telephone number 734-663-0954. We have people on the line that's saying they're praying for you and your family. Thank you so much for sharing her story. Like, it's heart-wrenching. We have Bill Amadeo on the line watching. He's a wonderful civil rights attorney. So maybe, you know, he might have some input on this as well. He's very good at what he does, and he has a heart for the people.
Well, it would be awesome. We can certainly use any help that we can get. And I think what we've been turned down for subpoenas, to subpoena people into court to get information. So we need to get out of that court. And I think the only way we can do that would be to sue them in civil court, because then we'll be able to get records and find out, you know, what really is going on. And I think what you're going to eventually start seeing with this is probably people filing wrongful death suits, because they are literally just slowly but surely killing my aunt. And I'm,
you know, and even with that, it's hard to prove, because I had a case with a loved one, and I know for sure that Glacier Hills was negligent in their death. And they'll always say, well, no, it was sepsis, you know, because they were already old. And I talked to Jeffrey Feiger, and he was saying, you know, it's very hard to prove in some cases of elderly people or sick people that negligence was actually the cause of death and not some of the other underlying conditions. But something has to be done. Something has to be done, because we cannot continue on this way. My sister just heard.
I know.
Yeah, I want to cry myself, because it is just horrible. Well, we're going to come to a close. Thank you, everybody that's on the live. And what's up, Bill? We love you. Dr. Trevelyan, Stephanie, everybody. Thank you for listening in. Those of you that tuned in late, we've shared the story of Roberta Asplund, who had more than $1 million in assets and cash, was of sound mind and good health, and fell victim to the corruption of the probate court system in Washtenaw County. And now she's tens of thousands of dollars in debt, almost looks emaciated, can't see her son or her family. And all she wants to do is come home and be with her family. You have been, now I'm holding back tears. So this is another episode of Black Coffee, No Sugar, No Cream Facebook Live, where we don't try to spill the tea or make you feel dazed like you drank a shot of cheap liquor. We just want you to see things from a different perspective. And tonight, It's not only mine, it is also the perspective of Alexis Moore and her auntie, Roberta Asplund.
I want to thank you both really for giving me the opportunity to share this story and hopefully shed some light on what's happening to our elder and vulnerable people in Michigan. It's
Yeah,
sickening.
this was, I've done a lot of shows, but I would say this is the toughest show that I have ever done
Well,
because it's just sickening.
it is, in the fact that you ladies are the only people that have tried to help, bring attention to this, no matter who we've turned to. I can't tell you, I've contacted every TV station, radio station, and nobody wants to help. Everybody's been told to step back and stay away from this. So I can't thank you enough, honestly, for letting me share my story tonight.
No worries. All right. Well, you have our information. We'll be in touch. Thank you, Trisha. As always, she is the producer of the show, and she brought the story to me, and that's how we got here. Thank you to all our viewers. Stephanie, Rochelle, calm down because she is over there lit and she is about it. So we want her to calm down and pray. And as we said, families come together, do what's in best interest of your loved ones, stop the fighting because we could end up hearing another story such as this as a result of it. You guys have a wonderful week. You can tune in on Monday where I will be talking about how to heal the hood. How do we put the neighbor back into the hood? What does that look like? So tune in Monday at 7 o'clock. You ladies have a wonderful weekend, and we're out of here. Good night.